Hi, thank you so much for joining us today. I am with Sabrina from Gravity Rose, who is an entrepreneur who helps women embody their gifts and own their superpowers. Thank you for joining us, Sabrina.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
I feel like we have a bit of a similar journey. And yeah, I wanted to kind of pick your brain about that and talk about your transition.
Oh, yeah, no, that sounds good. Yeah, it's funny. From what I see on Instagram, yeah, I feel like we've been on a kind of similar journey for sure. It's such a weird time, you
Yeah,
know?
tell me about it.
Uh, yeah. I'm like going through that now, like what I post on like Instagram versus like how much to
Hmm.
post on Instagram, how much like to share about our journeys and stuff like that. So I think it's a really interesting topic for sure.
Yeah.
I feel like as women, like trying to define ourselves and like what we do, especially when we're like these like multifaceted, multi-passionate like people, it's hard to sort of pinpoint. And you caught me kind of like in like smack in the like, I mean, right before I'm kind of putting it out there, like my next step. So I guess I'll just start sharing about that.
Yeah, perfect.
Essentially, yeah, like Alice Cass was like the online lingerie store, and like because of quarantine and COVID, like I had been thinking about closing it or like shifting away from that for like a year almost. So like when
Yeah,
that whole thing hit, I was like ready. I was like, okay, this is it. This is the time. I can
yeah.
like kind of expand and like focus on other stuff. But my journey with that was interesting because Alice Cass was I realized after I was like, I thought it was a business and I thought it was this online lingerie store. And I thought it was, it was really centered about self-love and female empowerment. And then I realized like it really was mostly a healing journey for me. And it was like me like learning about myself and sort of healing a lot of these wounds that I had around my femininity and all this stuff. And at that point, it was like very real. And then I realized that it was like everything was like it was deeper than what I thought it was, like the lingerie was like a catalyst that it made me go like, oh shit, I'm completely disconnected from my femininity, from my body, from my sexuality, from my emotions, like anything related to the feminine. I was like, oh, I've shunned that my whole life. And then through the lingerie, through that whole experience, I was reconnecting to that. But then I also realized, oh shit, there's like a whole other aspect that I haven't really explored. And it was really through kind of spirituality and like reconnecting to myself um, in that deeper way and kind of reconnecting to the divine that I sort of, then it was like a whole other world, like Alice Cass was almost like a rebellion and I was like fighting against something. And then I came back to myself and I was like, oh, like I came back to sort of like this idea of my mission, but in a different way. And then I created another platform called Oracle Sisterhood, which was more around the spirituality and ritual and like a lot of the practices that I use to sort of help heal myself and like get over a lot of these like fears and blocks I had. But through the whole process of like that kind of breakdown during COVID, I was like, oh my God, my masculine is also like wounded, and my inner masculine, that's what I realized, like my addiction to work, my like idea of like my worth coming from like my productivity and like just not even creating those boundaries within myself and that structure within myself. So it was like a breakdown of all that stuff. And then now I'm back at the point of like, okay, I went from one extreme to the other, and now it's kind of like bridging those two things together and just putting it all together to sort of like offer that. And I realized so like when you ask me like, what is it I do now? Like, what's my title? I realized that like my journeys have like brought me to this point, and it's kind of like bringing together all that stuff and removing all the because I always have these alter egos and I always have
Mhm.
these like other, just to like emphasize that part of myself, which I'm sure you can relate to.
Totally.
And and then now I think it's like stripping away that stuff and being like, oh, this is me. Like now I have something to offer. Like the mission behind everything that I do is always the same. It's always empowering women, like the feminine, healing that, like uplifting humanity in that sense by healing and finding that balance between the masculine and feminine. So it's been, you know, weaves through everything that I do, but now it's kind of like, okay, the lingerie is not there anymore to use. It's not the tool anymore that I'm using. I'm not hiding behind everything. So I'm going to actually become more of like a guide, a coach, like, and incorporating all sides of myself, like the business side, the Instagram side, the sensuality, the spirituality, and sort of like creating my own unique thing that I'm going to be offering. So that's kind of like a long summary of like where I'm at.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, it's funny, like so many of the things that you're saying, I'm like, yep, like super relating to, and I'm like, man, it's like you're telling my story. You know, I feel like we have like such a similar story of like coming from designer to still trying to figure out what we're doing, but like guiding and empowering women in some type, and like discovering ourselves and wanting to hold space for others while holding space for ourselves, and why really showing up for ourselves in that space as well, you know, and I totally relate to all of that, you know, and same thing, like I don't say it too loud, but I kind of have to admit I'm a little bit grateful for COVID in a sense, you know, because it allowed the train that was like go 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 to stop, forced stop. I would never have stopped it, you know what I mean? So the train got stopped, and it allowed me to get off and change tracks. You know, I knew that I wasn't on the right track. I love my business. I love Star Creations. I love what we do. It was always about empowering women as well. And I felt like we were doing more than just selling a product, you know, especially going to the different events and connecting with women, and especially women who weren't confident with their bodies, and being able to find that perfect piece that fits their body type, and then seeing them in the mirror just grow and like gain confidence in that moment. You know, I was like, yes, like that's what it's about for me. It was never about the product. But I always felt like, I'm like, okay, but there's more, like I can do more than this. I know it, you know, but I'm so busy with the shows and the producing and the designing and hand making everything. And it's just like so overwhelming. And for me, it took the burnout to really like slap me in the face and be like, whoa, like you're burning yourself out doing something that is kind of there, but not really right yet. And yet, because it's our businesses, right? It's our baby. It's so hard to just be like, well, what am I going to just quit and like just stop, you know? So having this forced stop through COVID really allowed me to like I said, get off the train and like revisit, be like, okay, I have this opportunity now. I have no events. All my events are canceled. My entire year is canceled. There's not going to be a new collection this year. There's not going to be more production. We're barely getting by on the website. Awesome. Like this is my opportunity to really do what I want to do. You know?
Yes. Thank you so much on all of that. It's funny because I actually, that's how we met. I know you don't remember, but like obviously because you see so many people, but it was like, I don't know, 4 years ago maybe.
2017. I actually went back in the emails and I found the email where we started talking, the collaborations of 2017.
Oh my God, I totally forgot about that too.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so it was a while ago. I just remember seeing from far away at the event like these harnesses, and I was like, oh my God, what is that? Like I was so excited. I remember meeting you, and like, yeah, I had that feeling from you too, like right away. I was like, oh, like it's not just this, you know, like there's something deeper. And I think that's what it is. Like we're so dedicated to like our projects and what we gave birth to. But on the other hand, it's weird because it's like we almost feel limited by it. Like I felt limited by it in so many ways. And that's what kind of like the whole COVID situation, like I had to like break down like all this like whole identity I had attached to like this business that like didn't, in a way, like it limited me and it didn't allow me to sort of express other sides of myself. Like I felt chained to this like thing that I built, you know, like I created it, and now I was like, oh, I'm
persona, right? This persona that we've created for ourselves. I'm the designer, I'm Veronika Starr, I'm this, I'm that. I have to show this aspect of myself on Instagram, you know, and like you, like I love your story that you did today on Instagram. I so relate to that as well. I have the 2 accounts, you know, I have like Veronika Starr and then I have Star Creations. And it's like, I feel a little bit hypocrite because I'm not able, I don't, and I know the limitations are put by me, but also by society of just like, I feel like I can't be 100% authentic on the Star Creations because, well, maybe it's a bit too hippy dippy, maybe it's a little bit too out there, a bit too esoteric for people. So I keep myself bottled in and have this presentable image of me as a designer, an entrepreneur, and a businesswoman. And it's like, I howl at the moon. I read tarot cards. I dance naked. Like, that's me, you know? And why can't I feel comfortable to show that aspect of myself on my business? Because I'm worried of how people will think of me, and they'll think of me differently, and they won't take me as seriously as an entrepreneur. So yeah, again, like, I love your post that you did today. I could so relate to that. Just like,
It's a lot of programming. It's just
yeah.
that's it. Like on a conscious level, we're like aware. We're like, oh, I can be all those things. I don't have to prescribe, to that old business model. And that's kind of like what I'm really working on and creating a program around is kind of as women, like how can we show up fully ourselves in business and still be like, I can be all aspects of myself and still be successful and still attract the right people. Because at the end of the day, I always look at like, who am I attracted to? What type of business owners? And it's always these women that are like fully themselves, fully all the weird things that they are. And I was just talking about this with like my business coach. She's a business coach, but she's also, she's a Reiki practitioner. She does energy healing. She's super into Taoism, and she channels aliens essentially. And she does that once in a while in our groups, that she's like, oh, like I can't do this in my business coaching class. And we're all just like, no, you have to do it. She still has that barrier within herself.
Yeah.
And it all has to do with us. Like I was just asking her about this before, and she was like, it's only in our head. Everyone else looks at it and doesn't see the internal struggle. They're just like, give us what you want to give us all of you. And we're like, oh, I have to put this here and I have to put that there and I have to compartmentalize. And in reality, it's like, that's all our own shit that we need to like work through. But it is that like, oh, you're not going to be respected, or you're not going to be taken seriously as a businesswoman. Like that's the big one, I think, for like people like that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That professional role, that businesswoman is such a high standard, particularly for women, because we have to compete with the men on top of feeling that we have to compete with the women, because that's what we've been programmed to think as well. And we always have to work harder. We always have to have more credentials. We always have to have more experience in order to feel that we can be as respected as our counterpart male, right? And you're right, it's bullshit. It's all in our heads, And in the end of the day, like, you can't be liked by everyone. You can't please everyone anyways. So why stop ourselves from being the fullest versions of ourselves when, even when we're not being the fullest versions of ourselves, there's people that are just like, nah, this is not for me. And that's okay. What is that going to change? You know what I mean? If anything, we have more opportunity to reach more people by being all these different aspects, all these different facets, all these different personas, and presenting them as a whole.
Yeah, 100%. Exactly.
Yeah.
And another thing that I realized that actually helps me when it comes to thinking about this is like when when you stop yourself from doing the thing, like being fully you, and like you're holding back, is to think like, okay, if I do this and if I shine my light like fully and I'm fully expressed, like it gives permission to others, and I'm actually doing like it's part of the mission. Like it's part of our mission as like women, as like a collective of like, okay, we're gonna change this. Like the next generation won't have to like internalize that thought pattern, that like blocks us from expressing. Like we have to kind of know that it's our responsibility, being aware to go, no, like I know this, like I have the responsibility to act differently now. I have to choose differently, and I have to show up not just for myself, but for like all women. We have the opportunity to do that. And like we've chosen to be leaders, we've chosen to lead our communities and to show up and to like use our lives kind of as like examples for others, like this is just a situation that we're just in it, that we've chosen that. So it's like, we got to keep choosing for like good, you know, for like the good of all in a
The
sense.
collective.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's the key thing too, is once you know, you can't go back. You know, like when you didn't know, it was like, okay, well, I didn't quite know yet. I'm still trying to figure it out. But all of a sudden, when you have that like aha moment, it's just like, oh shit, like, okay, now I know, now I got to do it. Now I can't unknow that. I need to keep going. I need to keep showing up, and I need to lead by example and lead by experience. Like that's been the big thing that really keeps coming back up for me this year. Just like, I'm like, okay, what am I gonna do? And I don't necessarily see myself as being a teacher. Like I'm still a student of life very much. It's very much about my personal healing journey, but I want to share all the things that I'm learning, all the realizations that I'm having, all the aha moments, all the tools, all the books, like whatever it is that has been so beneficial in my life, that has helped me gain confidence, have the courage to walk the unknown path. You know, I don't know all the answers. No one does, you know, but when we start to walk this and start to share this, we compare ourselves to others, right? We compare ourselves to the other people who seem to have all their shit together and to seem to have all the answers, or our personal coaches, and we're just like, oh, I hope I'll be like you one day, you know? And it's like, man, you got to walk the path. There was a moment where they didn't know shit either, you
For
know?
sure. And you
And
can't compare yourself. Like we often compare ourselves, but they're at like their phase 4, you know, we're at
mm,
like whatever phase we're at. And it's like you can't compare two different phases. Like everyone's on their own journey and everyone's
exactly.
in the process of learning and growing. And like the whole thing about like, oh, not knowing if we're ready to be teachers, or for, you know, like at the end of the day, every teacher is continuously learning. Like you're never going to be where you think,
Exactly.
you know, like we have so much to offer. Like if you think about yourself like 2 to 5 years ago, like that version of you is who you probably have around you right now, and she needed to know what you know now, you know. So
Exactly.
you offer, and sometimes you're only like maybe 1 or 2 steps ahead of like other people that can benefit from your wisdom. Like you are like, how can we judge where other people are at? Like we've acquired stuff on our journeys that is super beneficial, and that's the whole point, like to share that
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
to help others. So
And
it's
even
just like
like
our
if
ego.
if we had an actual title of like, I'm at level 4, you're at level 4, our levels would not look the same. You know
No,
what I mean?
even then.
Because we've had, I mean, ours would maybe be a bit similar because I feel like we're all on the same path. But you know, we have different experiences, we have different perspectives, we have different knowledge. So even having the same amount of experience, we still have a completely different thing to offer and a different experience to share. So yeah, it's really about just having the courage to walk that path, you know, and just showing up for ourselves and sharing, you know, and
Yeah,
sharing and connecting with the people that are right, you know, that we
that's
can connect with.
fun. I loved your challenge that you did where you were just
Mm,
sharing all like what you're doing. It's really really cool. That I was like, oh, that's awesome. I want to do that. Um, but yeah, it brings me back to sharing and that idea of service, of like offering things. Like that's something that I in the last little while realized how powerful that really is. I think also the business world tells you like, or just even growing up as a woman, like don't let people take advantage of you, like charge what you're worth. Like it's always
yeah,
this very like aggressive kind of like you have to be assertive, and yes, you have to be assertive and like stand up for yourself and have those boundaries, but there's this like element of like idea, almost like you're taking more than you're giving in a sense. Like that's what we're bred to sort of believe, like, oh, like have your walls up, like make sure you're charged for everything, like every single thing has to be like calculated and like
yeah,
orchestrating all this stuff. And I think realizing, working with women coaches and like different types of women in business, understanding that you can still have that feminine nurturing kind of element and like you can give, and the point is to be of service and to like, and to trust that it'll come back, and not necessarily directly, you know, but whatever you're putting out will come back in one way or another. Like that has been such a huge shift, and knowing that, you know, you are having an impact and you are helping people and you're changing people's perception and the way they see themselves and the world, like that's so important. And like it's almost like not discussed in like traditional business, you
mhm,
know,
yeah,
models. Because it's
absolutely.
always about the bottom line, you know. So I think
That
that's
was
really
goal focus. It's always about the goals. That was about the big picture. It's never about the journey. Never. It's never about the baby steps that you take, the stride that you get on. Like, it's never about that. It's always about the big picture, the end goal. And like, no wonder everyone's so overwhelmed and stressed out when all you think about is like, okay, I have to get here now. And it's like, no, you have to get here. And then you go there, and then you go here. And like, enjoy that process. Exactly. You know what I mean? And it's like, that's what it's about, you know? And so again, like, you know, grateful for this time to slow down,
yeah.
take your breath, revisit, connect with what is so important, you know? And for me, like you were talking about the 30-day challenge that I posted, those things that I've started integrating in my life and putting them into practice have been so beneficial, particularly, and this one's a tough one for me to say, but vulnerability, you know, like that was the big game changer for me, because I've always very much associated with my masculine side. Since I was young, I like very young, I grew up in a harsh world. I had violence, I had abuse, I had like all of that since I was like 2.5. So I was taught that if I wanted to survive in this world, I had to be tough. I started putting on the armor very young. And so, you know, screw boys don't cry, girls don't cry either. Like, that's what I grew up with, you know. I had to be tough, I had to be a survivor, I had to be there for my mom. I had to be tough in school because I was being bullied all the time, and I knew that if I showed weakness, then it would get worse. Um, you know, it was like one thing after another. So that the armor was so thick, the shield that I had put around myself was so thick, that opening up to people and sharing how I was feeling was weakness, right? So it was just like, no, I'm a warrior. Like, that's what I associate with. I'm the warrior. I power through, man. I'm an entrepreneur, masculine energy, go, 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 go. And this burnout forced me to share, forced me to admit that I was struggling. It forced me to ask for help, which was very hard on me and my ego, particularly. And and now, in retrospect, 2 years later, I'm so grateful that it did, because it has changed my life in so many ways. Not only do I feel more authentic, obviously, because I'm not hiding behind this image of like, I'm super strong, I can do all of this, even though behind the scenes I'm crying myself to sleep and I'm exhausted and I don't know how I'm going to get through the next day. And then showing up with a smile on my face of like, yep, all good. But I'm also connecting with people at such a different level that was not possible before, you know. And the other benefit of that, of being able to share with others, is now people see me as someone that they can share with. So again, coming back to leading by example, you know, by being vulnerable and by allowing myself to really be authentic in how I'm feeling and to share that and to have an open, honest communication, I'm receiving that open, honest communication from other people, and that's allowing me to hold space for other people as well. And that has been so touching to me, and that is the fuel that has really ignited this right now, of me wanting to really do this work, because I've really done it with myself and I've seen the benefits of it, and I want to show up for other people and keep that momentum going.
Yeah, I love that. It's like the giving and receiving. That whole journey is so like, it's as if you were describing like you said it was 2 years ago, right? So 2 years ago I quit drinking alcohol, and like I had all the same experiences you just mentioned. Like, it made me super vulnerable. Like, I realized I had to like reconnect to myself in a way that I had never connected. I was avoiding all this stuff by using alcohol, and then without it I was like, oh shit. And like the connection that I like the intimacy that's created with people after that, because it, you know, you're in a really vulnerable state. And I was sharing about it on Instagram as well. Like, eventually after like 6 months, I was like, oh, I'm doing this thing where I quit drinking alcohol. And I started kind of sharing my journey on like a lingerie Instagram. You know, it was my business Instagram. So it was a very weird thing to do at the time. In my head, I was like, is this weird? I was like, but I have to do it. Like, I have to show up and talk about it's lingerie is about women, you know, it's like a woman's vulnerability. So like, to me, I had to share my experiences, because there's all this facade on Instagram, you know, about that perfection, showing up and like with the smile and like, oh, I have it all together. And then there's that point where you're like, no, okay, enough. And you break down and you're like, let's be real. And then you realize actually that was the key to everything, because your business, like my business did so much better after that. I felt better about everything. I was connecting with people in a deeper, more authentic way. My relationships shifted completely. So it was really like a crazy parallel to like what you're saying, like everything you said. I was like,
Yeah, that's what I'm telling you. I feel like we're living in parallel worlds. Like we're going through on the same journey. I quit drinking as well, so you know that too. Because yeah, it's such a nice social lubricant. You know, it's just like I've always considered myself to be a super social person, an extrovert. Like I can go up on the stage, I can be an MC, like I can do shows and stuff like that. But really, I'm super introverted. And that was like, so I can't remember who it was that I heard say that. It might have been Brene Brown. She's like, I'm an introverted extrovert. And I was like, is that a thing? Like, can I be that too? Because that's how I feel.
Yeah.
You know?
And Brene person say that too. She was like, I don't know if I was an introverted extroverted introvert, because I'm a total introvert. Like people would see me on Instagram and then they'd meet me in real life. And I always felt like I was letting them down, because I'm I've always been super shy. Like I was so shy, like I had social anxiety, like from like being like from since when I was a little kid. Like I was never comfortable in like around people. Like people were my biggest fear, you know, like speaking was my biggest fear, like being seen, like taking up space. I would like hide in curtains like as a kid, you know, like I was not comfortable with that at all. So like alcohol for me was like that tool. I was like that magic thing. I was like, I could be myself, you know. And I was like, oh, suddenly I felt like I could be seen and I could speak. And then when I took that away because it was leading to things that were not good, I was like, oh fuck, like I gotta relearn how to live, you know?
Yeah, relearn how to be that person without that social lube.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then who am I? Am I introverted? Am I extroverted? Like, because I love connecting with people, like I love talking and I love engaging, but then I'm like, crowds freak me out, you know, and that's okay. I think it's also a process of like self-acceptance, being like, oh, I'm okay with being awkward sometimes, and I'm okay with being imperfect. You know, I think it always comes back to this idea that we have to be perfect, you know, like women, like you gotta be everything. You can't ever make a mistake. And like we're all just stressed out about how we show up, how we're perceived, you know, because it's always about judgment, how we're perceived, the outside looking at us as opposed to us just looking at us, you know. I found that also real, like when my business was kind of like when I was shifting and doing all that stuff, I was like, shit, like I really see myself like, how will this be perceived? And as a business, you know, you kind of end up being trained to think that way, like how will it be received, because it's tied to your income, it's tied to your livelihood. So you're like, that's the added stress. It's not like, oh, will people like me? It's like, will they like me, and will I make money, and will I be able to feed myself? Like, you know, like everything, it's like so tied to like our root chakra, like our sense of security, like and survival, you know. So it's a very heavy, like loaded kind of in like space.
Absolutely, totally agree. And it's hard to disconnect from that while like holding space for ourselves in that moment of just like, okay, yes, there is that aspect, like you said, it is tied into my finances. I do have to remain professional. There is a certain liability kind of, I want to say, with the company, right? But then there's also, yeah, but I'm a real person and I want to show up authentically, and this is part of the work I'm doing. And if the people don't like what I'm doing, then they're not my clients, you know, and that's okay. And the people who are my clients will find me and will connect with that, you know.
It comes down,
yeah,
it comes down to trust, trusting yourself, trusting that the right people will come, like trusting that you're like, if it's coming from your heart and you're authentic, like we have to trust that whatever is meant for us will find us.
Mhm.
And it's just constantly like coming back to that center of trust, 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 trust.
Yeah.
That's been like a big practice, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And for me,
And
the book that I just read recently is the one that really like nailed it for me. Having the courage to be disliked. That's what it is. You know, it's so scary to be disliked. Of course, we want to be liked by everyone. Of course, we want to have followers and we want to get thumbs up on our videos and our podcasts and our things. You know what I mean? Like no one likes to have bad reviews and bad comments, but it's okay. It is part of life. We cannot be liked by everyone. That is a fact. Every day there's someone that might not like us, and that's fine, you know? So it's having that courage to be disliked and instead be authentic, because that's more important, you know? Being authentic is more important than being liked. That's what it comes down to.
yes. And it's funny, I think it really comes down to like our culture's, it's like these dualities and like our culture's kind of judgment of like good and bad. It's like there's a lot of things in life that are just the opposite of one thing, like the death is the opposite of life, and we are so scared of death and we don't talk about it, and yet it is part of life. Without death we don't have life, you know? And we're so, and it's like anything that's like day and night, like all that stuff, we always judge. We tend to judge things as good or bad when they're just the two sides of the same thing. And I think that's part of why we have such a resistance to not being liked, or to, because we don't look at those things, the shadow side, you know? We're not comfortable with our shadow, we're not comfortable with our flaws, we pretend they're not there, instead of going, oh yeah, of course I have flaws, I'm a human being, like I'm not going to be 100% perfect. But yet we always just, oh, let's just pretend, let's not look, let's just ignore it, let's ignore it until it blows up or creates illness in you or whatever happens. I think it's that, and that's been a big part of my journey too, is that shadow work and like getting really comfortable with like all those things that, you know, they tell you to be ashamed of, or they tell you to not look at, or that everyone just pretends that it doesn't exist. And you're like, okay, there's a big elephant in the room, like what's, like, can we talk about this, you know?
Yeah.
And
when you start doing the shadow work, what you realize is that that's where your power is, behind the elephant. You know? So it's like, it's so weird that we're taught to like forget all that stuff and not acknowledge it, because like you said, it is that another side of the same coin, and both are 100% necessary. Both are was the word I'm looking for, like they bounce off each other, and this is how we grow. If we don't look at the shadows, if we don't look at it, I mean, imagine if we were all perfect, what would we have to aspire to? How would we grow? You know, it's our weaknesses that make us strive for bigger strength. It's the things that we're less good at that make us want to be better. It's the things that people dislike that maybe we look at and go, oh, well, maybe I can improve. You know, that's where our growth comes from.
and that's a big perspective shift, right? Like once you're able to realize like, oh, that is not something bad necessarily, it's just there to teach me so that I could develop the superpowers that I need to fulfill my mission, you know? Like without those obstacles, like you're not growing. And people that don't kind of self-reflect and choose to not look, like you realize they're very stagnant, and you know, it's like a plateau, and some people are okay with that, but like we're not, you know, like, and a lot of people aren't. And it's once you kind of, you shift from that victim mindset to like empowering yourself with those kind of obstacles and being like, okay, like how can I use this to grow? How can I use this as an opportunity for growth? And what is this trying to teach me? Like that's the big one. And then on the other hand, everything is cyclical, you know? I think that's the other thing, is that we get caught up in like this linear, like I have to go that way and keep moving forward. But like everything is just in constant state of flow, but we just get caught up. So that just, yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, just like the planet, especially in Canada, we're so lucky to really have the 4 stations, you know, the 4 seasons where that really represents that well. You know, it's like it can't be summer all the time. It can't just be growth. We have to stop and take a step back and hibernate and go inside, like hibernation, go inside, introspection, revisit, am I on my path? What do I want from my life? What am I doing? Who are the people around me? Are we gaining things from each other, or is someone just taking my energy? You know, like we need those cycles in order to really be in perfect balance. So
Exactly.
yeah, thanks for bringing that back up, because that's so important. Life is cyclical. Our way of acting should be cyclical. Our way of being throughout the year. We need that respite. We need that step back.
It's crazy how like rest and like we've been talking about a lot about business a lot too, and it's funny because rest is so not like valued in business. It's like, oh, like you sleep, like what, you know? And
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, no, like your brain needs to regenerate. You actually are more creative when you sleep, and it's good for you, and that's when you get ideas and all this stuff. But we're not taught that, you know. We're taught to, and it's again, it's the internal, it's all the anything associated to the feminine is just like, no, that's bad. Like, but like you were saying, we need to take that step back, like the seasons and everything, and like turning in, and our bodies, like trusting our bodies. That's another thing in business. Like I can't even imagine having to go to an office when I'm PMSing, or like when I'm going through things, like my body's going through stuff. Like you're supposed to just turn in and chill and relax and like not push your body. But we live in this culture that's just like push, like ignore reality, ignore nature, ignore that we are nature,
Ignore
and
your
just
body.
ignore everything and just pretend that this is not happening and keep pushing 100% all the time. Like how does that make any sense? It blows my mind. But like learning to like reconnect to all that, and to be able to go, oh, like I'm taking a couple of days off because I need to rest. Like it seems so radical in our day and age, but it's like it's so important, you know?
Yeah. And it comes with a lot of shame.
Yep.
You know, it's like, oh, you're only working 40 hours a week? Lucky you. I work 80 hours a week. And it's
Yeah.
like,
It's like a badge of honor.
exactly. It's a badge of honor. I'm overworked. I'm stressed out. I work 80 hours a week. I never take a break. I work overtime every night. I haven't taken a vacation in 4 years. Badge of honor. And it's like, oh, that's like a badge of sickness if you ask me. Like, you want to know my life? Like I take 3 months off during the year, and I go and I travel and I connect with people and I learn new skills. Every year I take time off to learn a new skill. I sleep at least 8 hours a day. I take an hour to meditate in the morning. Like I work out every day, do my yoga, you know, like that's life. I try not to work more than 6 hours a day. You know, if I can get away with 4, I'd like to do 4. Like that's the life I want to hear. That's a badge of honor. Like I'm succeeding in life, only working 4 hours a day.
Yep. And it's shifting all these mindsets, you know, because to me too, I'm like, yes, that's the life, you know,
right?
But like we do have this shame and guilt around like, oh, am I allowed? Like for me, a long time, like resting or like not working or like in the middle of the day taking a nap or like doing all these things, I'd be like, oh, I don't want anyone to know like that this is, you know, like how dare I? Who do I think I am? I'm so spoiled. Like I get to do this, you know? And it took me a really long time to shift that and be like, no, like I chose this life. Like I built my life so that I can live this way, and I have no reason to feel ashamed of it. And like I think more people should live this way if that's their desire, you know. And us getting out there and sharing that it's possible actually helps other people to know that it's possible. And yeah, but it's a process to like.
It is. And like when I started doing that, so like our first thing was like leaving during the winters, because I can't do the Montreal cold, man. Like yes, I'm spoiled, and yes, there's a little bit of privilege in there, I admit. But again, like you said, this is a life that I chose. I changed the work that I was doing. I started a company that I could do that I can work from a little bit everywhere, that I could take off during the winter. Like I planned that life. This life didn't come to me, you know. And a lot of people like always say like, oh, you're so lucky, you know, like traveling 3 months a year and leaving during the winter. And I'm like, did I win the lotto and like nobody told me? Like I don't remember winning the lottery. Like I don't come from a privileged rich family. I grew up poor in the ghetto. Like I don't come from money. Where's the luck? Like, this is not luck. This is the life that I decided that I wanted to live and that I made happen, you know? And anybody can do it because I'm no one special. So yeah, I think that this is a part of, you know, why it's so important for me to share this, because this was a dream of mine at some point. You know, I remember sitting in my living room talking with my husband at the time and being like, how are we going to do this? You know, like I can't want to be here during the winters anymore. I'm so miserable. I was really unhappy. I was making at that point the most money I've ever made. I had 2 weeks paid vacation. Oh my God, which was like a big thing then, right? When you're in the corporate world. I had insurance. I had like everything I wanted. The boss loved me. And I was just so miserable, so miserable. And I remember calling my mom and being like, Mom, like, I don't know what to do. Like, on paper, I have everything. I'm married. We have a beautiful house. I'm finally making money. I'm not a struggling artist anymore. I've got the paid vacation, the insurance, and everything. And yet, like, I want to cry every day. You know, I hate my life. I drink every day. I smoke weed every day because it's the only way I can, like, get out of this funk and, like, come back to myself in a sense. And my mom, God bless her, gave me the best advice. She told me to quit.
Yeah.
You know, she's like, if you're not happy, quit and live your life. And that's what I started doing. And I had no idea how I was going to be here. Like, this was a dream. And here I am, you know, living in Colombia now. You know, still, like, the business is shifting, but I did manage to have a successful business. And I'm happy and I'm healthy. I'm in the best health I've ever been in my life. I'm working the least amount of hours I've ever worked in my life. Yeah, okay, granted, I'm not the richest that I've been, but that doesn't matter. You know, money is not everything. Money is just a means to an end. It is not our value, you know, and that's so important. So
That's
important.
a big one. That's a big one because I find right now in the spiritual world and the manifestation world, a lot of coaches and things like that really put this emphasis on like what you charge as a measure of your self-worth.
Yeah.
And the prices are like really, really nuts. Like I've seen people who charge like that $600 US an hour, you know,
Yeah.
and like they're just like, that's what I'm worth, you know. And like, okay, yeah, like have self-worth, but I'm just feeling like there's something a little like off about that on some level. Like I don't like, I don't know, it doesn't sit well with me. And like I understand the logic behind it and like the transformation that people can bring, you know, in a specific container. And I understand how much energy and self-development work we do on ourselves to be able to provide that service and to hold that space for people. But I think there's like a point where it's getting really far, and like understanding that we are still here to like help each other and to help the world and to do good, to obviously respect ourselves and make a living. But there's this emphasis now on like the number, the money, that like I'm like, I just want a life that I feel good in. Like I want to have a great impact on people. I want to build something. But like I think when we get too focused on the money, even in the spiritual world, like I feel like it's happening, you know. I think you could get easily caught up in that still, you know.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because again, that's what we're taught. You know, our value is how much we're worth. You know, financially, like that's how much we're worth financially is how much we're worth actually, and how much hours we're working, with the size of our house, how many cars we have, how many shoes we have in our closet, like, you know. And it's just like, no, that's not worth anything. You know,
Yeah.
what to me, and that's it's reevaluating that and renaming it. You know,
Yeah.
what is my value? How do I determine what my value is? When I'm on my deathbed, how am I going to evaluate my life? You
Yeah.
know, how am I going to say, like, yeah, you know what, I had a really good life, or like, ah, shit, you know what, I kind of missed the boat? Like, how am I going to answer that question? And to me, it's how much did I contribute to the world?
Yeah.
That's one of the first things for me. How much did I contribute? What am I leaving behind? You know, how much time did I spend with my loved ones? How many times did I tell them that I love them and appreciate them, and how much I'm grateful for them in my life? That's my value.
Yeah.
You know, it
Yeah.
doesn't matter how much money I'm making. I just need to make enough to get by and to keep doing what I need to do to buy a few plane tickets during the year.
It's okay. Like
travel. That's it.
we deserve to have the things that we desire, you know, like we deserve to like enjoy ourselves. And I don't think it's like, oh, you're spiritual, you don't get to have money. I think we all, the more money you have, also the more you can contribute, you know, the more you can give
Exactly.
back, the more you can build these communities and do good in the world. But yeah, just not getting stuck in that trap that we're like trying to escape of like it meaning more than it means, you
Yeah,
know.
exactly.
And it's just staying centered and clear on like what our priorities are, you know, what are we really doing here, and like what is our mission, like what is our why, and like not getting caught up in the ego stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the expectations that others have of us, or that we even think that others have of us, you know, it's like we put so much value on that, on this comparing what other people in our field are doing, and how we think others want us to be and behave, and what we think we should be as wives, as teachers, as friends, as daughters, and just, yeah, just reevaluating all of that,
Just being, you
stripping
know.
all those layers and just being. Yes.
Yeah,
I
like
hope
letting go of all of it and being like, this is my essence,
that.
this is it, you know.
Totally.
Yeah.
Awesome. So before we wrap this up, I would love for you to tell me a little bit more about Oracle Sisterhood.
Sure. This is the platform that I launched during COVID. So it was really about bridging this gap between like spirituality and sensuality, and sort of exploring like all facets of the feminine and just like empowerment. And I started building these kind of like online courses and sharing like what other women in the community are doing, and just making it more community oriented. And just having a space. It is also like a blog, like I share a lot of my articles on it, and like I take submissions from people as well, and I interview people. So it's just like a space to kind of have all this stuff like live on it, you know. I had a vision to take it, I have a vision for it of where I want it to go, but right now, because I'm like one person, I'm doing it a step at a time. So there are like workshops on it and stuff like that, but for right now it's kind of just like housing everything that I'm birthing essentially, you know, because I think it's important to also like have a place for creative expression that isn't necessarily to sell, you know. We get caught up in our businesses. So I kind of wanted also a platform where, you know, I could post my videos and my writing and like different things like that. So it's really yeah, it's really bringing
Awesome.
together the spiritual side too. And I talk a lot about like moon rituals and astrology, and like it's very feminine, like tying in like the whole intuition aspect of life and cyclical living and all kind of all the stuff we talked about today. So
Awesome.
yeah, yeah.
So can people get involved? How do people reach out to you if people want to connect with you?
Instagram is still like the best place. So I have at Oracle Sisterhood, and then my personal sort of which was my lingerie Instagram, which became my personal, is now called Gravity Rose. And that's kind of like an ode to this idea that the thing that weighs us down is also the thing that helps us rise, like gravity, which pulls us down to earth. It rose, you know. So like it's this idea of like shadow work and like healing through our obstacles. And also roses are just the flower with the highest vibration. So I was like, that's nice. It's like the symbolic of the heart, you know? So I changed it during quarantine as well. And I was like, I just feel like this name is nice, but I don't know if I'll keep it. We'll see. But it's at Gravity Rose right now. I shift my identity so much, like all the time. So
Oh my God, you and me, sister, you and me, sister.
yeah,
It's hard to just fit into one thing. And why should we? Why should
I
we?
like,
That's
I
it.
don't want
It's
to
okay to change. Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, we're cyclical, right?
yeah,
So it's like we have to honor ourselves. It's like one day I feel like this, and the other day I feel like that. Sometimes I'm Veronika, sometimes I'm just V, you know? And so
yeah,
my different personas, and all of them are versions of me. So yeah,
totally. Yeah.
absolutely. Awesome. Well, this was a great conversation. I would love to do this again. I really, really
Yeah,
enjoyed talking with you and getting to know you a little bit more. And it's really so exciting to see our shifts, and a lot of our connections as well. And it would be nice to collaborate on something as well. I
I'd
really,
love I love that. Thank you so much. Your story is really inspiring as well. So I'm like, I'm really happy to have gotten to know you better as well. Thank you.
See you again soon.
All right. So I want to start something again, but I'm learning to do one thing at a time.
Yeah. Oh, tell me about it. Teach me. I'm the same. I was at like 17 projects going on at the same
What
time.
sign are you?
Pisces.
Oh, wow. Interesting. My sister's a Pisces.
And you?
I'm an Aries.
Aries. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's very Aries to start a million projects, but Pisces too have a hard time finishing projects.
Yeah, yeah. Because we're creative, you know, it's just like I'm spontaneous. So it's like, ooh, yes, I want to do that. I'm into it now. And then I'm just like, yeah, I'm not so into it anymore. It's like, oh yeah, okay, I'm into this now. You know, so it's like, it's finding that just balance of like allowing for that creative energy to come in bubbles and then allowing myself to let it go when I'm not feeling it so much anymore, but also, you know, realizing that when there's moments that I'm not feeling it so much more, it doesn't mean that I have to give up. Maybe I need a little bit more persistence and dedication. And it's like finding that just balance of like both of those.
I know exactly that feeling. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I think that if it doesn't fully like light you up, if you're not like 100% hell yes.
Yeah. Hell yes, thank you. That's what it is. That was one of my things, the challenges, right? Look for the hard yes, the hell yes. You know what I mean? Is it a soft yes or is it a hard yes?
Yes.
Thanks for reminding me of that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
not a hard yes.
We get into that position a lot. And I'm reading this book called The Essentialist or Essentialism.
Okay.
And it's really about like, is it great? Like only saying yes to the things that are really great, that are really, really great. It's kind of like Marie Kondo, you know, like when you're getting rid of stuff, like how, like, is it a hell yes? Like anything that's below that, like you don't have time for, like it's not worth it. Like we have to say no to the opportunities that aren't 100% yes to make room for the ones that are the 100%.
Are. Exactly.
So,
absolutely.
Like,
and that's how we end up with 17 projects. By just starting things that aren't hell yeses.
Yeah. And that's why we're depleted, and that's why we're overworked, because we're saying yes to this person and yes to that project and yes to this and yes to that, and then we're like, oh fuck, I don't have time to do the things I actually want to do because I said yes to everything. So yeah, I'm trying to practice that because I'm like, I could do it, I could do that, I could do this. And it's like, no, you got to say no sometimes. You got to say no, no matter how.
Just because you can do it doesn't mean you have to.
Yeah. It's a big life lesson, that one.
Huge. Huge.
I learned. Yeah, I said yes to a lot of things. I was like, because it seems like a good opportunity, and you're like, well, other people would be so happy to have this. How could I be so spoiled again and say no?
God,
and you're like,
same dialogue. Yeah. But just because it's a good opportunity doesn't mean it's a good opportunity for you, right?
Exactly. Like it has to be specifically for you.
Exactly. Yeah, what looks good on paper is not always what's good in reality. That's what I'm really learning.
Saying no, I have to,
It's tough. It's tough. Setting our boundaries and really respecting them, and like I have to literally, like, I write them down. Like I have to have this piece of paper here in front of me and be like, okay, is this in line with this? Because I'm so spontaneous in my mind in the moment, I'm like, yes, like absolutely, this is a yes, this is such a great opportunity, this, that, da 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 da. And then I look at the paper and I'm like, oh, but wait a minute, yeah, okay, I'm not gonna be able to do this is not in line with that. Oh fuck, you know.
Like that's what I'm doing. I have these lists of like, is this in alignment? How does it make me feel in my body? Where, like, is it a contraction or an expansion? You know, like I have same thing, all those questions, because we get caught up in our head and we have to come back to our bodies and come back to like our truth and like, is this my mission? Is this part of my mission? No, I don't have time for it. I can't do it.
Out the door. Yeah. It's hard. It's so much easier to say yes than to say no. And again, the courage to be disliked, you know, like that fear of like, oh, if I say no, then I might be disappointing someone, you know? Yeah. And it's like, yeah, but if you say yes, guess what? You're disappointing yourself. You know, you're not honoring yourself. So what's more damaging?
Yeah, and it's a disservice to the other person too, because you're not
In the
going to
long
show
run,
up.
yeah.
You know, someone else will show up better for that opportunity. You know, you're just
Exactly.
going to be like, "Fuck, what did I do?" You know, and like, yes, but I meant no, and now this is awkward, and now my heart's not in it, and like da da da. You know, someone else will be the full-bodied yes. So you
Exactly.
gotta move into that too. Oh,
What a
this was
journey.
great. I'm really happy. I'm really excited.
Awesome. Good. Me
I
too.
love conversations like this.
Awesome. Well, let's do it more often. Well, yeah, if you'd love to do it again, I would absolutely love to have you again.
Sure, I'd love that.
And
Thank
let's keep in touch.
you. Yeah. Bye.
Okay. Bye.